time is a-ticking. We need your nominations. Podcastawards.com in the news and politics category. And thank you so very much. Hello, friends, and welcome to Your Daily Detroit, your daily podcast sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. Coming to you from a summery north end in the beautiful city of Detroit. It is Wednesday, July 19th, 2023. I'm Jer Stays, and across the table from me is
Norris Howard, the pride of Brightmo.
I see what you're drinking here, and I'm drinking it now too, but it's basically sparkling water with fruit next to it.
Yes, it's lovely sparkling water and getting nice and hydrated for the show today because I think we're going to be doing one of my favorite things.
Oh, what is that?
It's mail time.
Oh, boy. Yeah, well, we've collected a lot lately at dailydetroit@gmail.com or called in at 313-789-3211. We've got a lot to sift through on a ton of topics, more than usual. So it's like I figured, why don't we do an episode that kind of circles back to all this stuff and talk about it? Because you all have feelings. And Norris, if I've known you for a little while, I know that you have responses.
Yeah, I always have responses, but I think the most wonderful thing about this is that I feel like Daily Detroit as a podcast, as a news outlet, does a great job at reporting all the news around. But one thing that you can't really do with traditional news, at least TV news, is just call the news and say, talk about this, because this is going on. They got to sift through a lot of stuff. But on Daily Detroit, you send an email and we reply.
One of our listeners calls us the People's Press Pass. Shout out to Al.
That's really cool. Like, that should be a subtitle. Daily Detroit, the People's Press Pass. I love it.
Let's dive into it. This one is on the news that recently Cinema Detroit closed their physical space. I saw a photo on Facebook recently of them taking down the sign. I enjoyed Cinema Detroit. Anything we say here, I'm going to put in here as, I want to say flat out, I totally respect entrepreneurs doing their thing. And doing an independent movie theater is one of the hardest things you can pick to do. And we'll talk more about that in a second. But can a movie theater work in Detroit? Hey buds, Brian here. I'm sad to see that Cinema Detroit has closed their physical space to go to pop-ups in New Center Park. I think I'll go to the pop-ups more though. I got thinking, people, me too, keep saying Detroit needs a movie theater. But does it? And does anywhere?
Yes, I think the cinema experience is still really cool, especially for, I'm a big action movie guy. Like, you know, a lot of people think that I would be like a cinema buff. I'm not. I want to go and watch a big Marvel movie or something.
And for context, if people don't know, entertainment journalism, entertainment news is a big part of what you do outside of this and have done.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I kind of, I'll run around in these spaces a lot, but there's something to just the silver screen, especially when it comes to what I like to call a whoop-ass movie. You know, your John Wick style movies, Bourne Identity, that kind of stuff, right? I love the movie experience, but I had to think back when we were going to talk about this, and I had to think back, do I really love the movie experience? No, what I love is the premium movie experience. You know, I've done the whole art house film thing. I've been to Cinema Detroit multiple times in both locations, and what I loved about it was the ability to be able to go and see those small experiences, the indie films and all that sort of thing. But if we're talking about making it work financially, you got to go for the premium experience, flat out. You got to do your Imagine Theaters style thing with the leather seats and all that. Can that work in Detroit? Abso-freaking-lutely. Absolutely.
So I have a couple of thoughts on this. I think, one, it's really hard for an individual business to beat the market. The market is, there are only half the tickets to movies sold than there was before the pandemic. Okay. Lots of people prefer to just stay at home. That's what you're competing against. CNBC reports this year that 3,000 movie screens have gone dark since 2019. And an expert that they have says that new theaters will need to be between 12 and 16 screens to make it. That's huge, number one. And I'm trying to think about the spaces in Detroit that could hold something like this. I think that there is headwinds with this. I think that we have been talking about a movie theater for so many years, and it's my experience when something's going to happen, it gets done. And I feel like there have been a lot of headwinds with this one. I agree with you on the premium experience. I also think there's room for premium that isn't just about the film quality, but premium in like being a film club, or premium in being something that creates a lot of memories. I think that's another way to reach out, especially if you're not going to be showing the whiz bang big Transformers films or whatever. It's more about those connections. I think that New Center Park is a cool experience to watch something in the park. I see why, Brian here is like, oh, I think this is something that I want to check out. I think there's just too many market forces here. It's going to make it difficult to go. I think you've got the movie industry, and then you've got the fact that it's going to be premium, and people are going to squawk about that. But the reality is that premium is dominant everywhere and becoming more dominant everywhere. It just, in Detroit, it sticks out more because of the huge contrast between the haves and have-nots. And unfortunately, many of the businesses that I see try to be accessible also end up financially in the crapper. And that's a hard truth, and it's really difficult to wrestle with.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. So 2 points to that. I do think New Center Park and being able to screen some of those smaller films and indie films is a great venue. Obviously, there's some theater venues like within the DIA. There are screens and places where you can have these sort of more focused experiences for film. I agree with that. But if we're talking about having a profitable movie theater, you can't do it without filming the new Spider-Man movie. Like, you just got to get rid of that thought right now. If you're going to make money on a movie theater, you got to show the movies that are at the lowest common denominator. Your superhero movies, your John Wick movies, that kind of stuff. Barbie, Oppenheimer, that's what you got to screen, right? So I think if you were to do that in the city of Detroit, you can do it. And to your point about the premium experience, is that I actually agree, but I also think that it makes movies feel more of like an experience, more of like, hey, we're going out to do a thing. This is an outing. This is something for us to remember, because when I was a kid, it was memorable to go to the movies. It was an event. You didn't go every weekend to the movies, right? So it was a cool, fun experience. And, you are competing with the at-home market. And to be perfectly honest, I don't think you can beat the at-home market trying to be an art house film theater, period. You can't do it. So if you're going to try to make money as a movie theater, I think you go for the premium experience. You think about maybe 10 screens. You put it somewhere where it's centrally located that somebody can go down and you could do dinner in a movie and make it an event. I think we need to return to that, to films and the movie theater being an event. And then I think you'll be seeing at least it be more feasible financially.
Do you remember some years ago, maybe it was even during the Kwame Kilpatrick administration, when they were talking about putting a movie theater right there in Cadillac Square?
Mm-hmm.
Like all those renderings back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this has been talked about for so many years and nothing has happened. I think that it could do well, but I question overall if Metro Detroit needs more screens, full stop.
I would agree with that, because you're already competing with Imagine Canton, Imagine Novi, Imagine Royal Oak, the AMC on Haggerty in Novi, the AMC in Troy. So there are a lot of screens, but at the same sense, I feel like you still have 500,000 people who are forced to drive all the way out to Royal Oak or Southfield or
Well,
Dearborn.
there's the Bel Air, but that parking lot's like the surface of the moon.
Exactly, or Dearborn to go and watch the movies. That's silly. But if you put a theater somewhere in this, sort of midtown, downtown core somewhere, or even in New Center, and you, again, give people a reason to get back to the center of the city, then I think you begin to see a little bit more. It lacks attractions. It lacks the everyday attraction. You're not going to go to see the Tigers or the Pistons every day, but people will go to the movies every weekend. There will be people every weekend to go watch a movie in downtown Detroit if you put it there.
Would love to hear your feedback. dailydetroit@gmail.com. All right, there was a lot with this weed conversation. We set people off. There was a lot. I picked out a couple of the mailbag pieces, some of them that I think were interesting and represented different viewpoints, because there's a lot in one side, a lot in the other, that kind of thing. And for recap, this was basically around the news that the city of Detroit is working on the distance requirements for weed shops. Should there be more recreational marijuana shops and marijuana businesses? We got a lot of feedback. Some people saying, hey, we shouldn't have any more. A lot of people saying that it's fine that it's in the suburbs. A lot of people saying that there should be a district where we just say, okay, let's draw the lines. It all goes here. So here's a couple of things I wanted to share. Shelley, very thoughtful conversation on weed in Detroit, but missed how I feel. This never should become a corporate business. I want to give my brothers and sisters in the spirit of Ujamaa, no government, no regulations. The colonial nature of capitalism means we black people can never truly gain wealth. I do not trust that the goal is to right the wrongs of the war on drugs. That is impossible. You cannot turn back time on the prisoners. So yes, I want legal marijuana in Detroit. No, I do not want more stores or large grows. Allow us to cultivate and enjoy our plant for our families and leave us alone. I voted yes on legality, not the business on something that shouldn't be about capitalism, but personal healing and joy.
First of all, I love your comment, sister. And it sounds like, I don't know if you're familiar with Akibalan Village, which is a summer camp I went to back in the day. Word to Master Cofield and Brother Jabari out of Akibalan out there on Van Dyke, or it used to be out there on Van Dyke and Gratiot. But one thing that I will say about this comment is that inside, do I wish that was the case? Absolutely. Do I wish that it was a situation in which everything could just be wonderful and we could just give it away for free and everybody can enjoy what they enjoy? Sure, but this is America, okay? And if something is legal, we will find a way to make money off of it.
Even if something's illegal,
Even if it's illegal, we'll find a way to make money off of it, which is, by the way, part of why this whole war on drugs even began is because people were finding ways to create profit and wealth in underground markets. And so for me, I understand the energy of this response and as a human being, fundamentally agree. But also at the same time, I do think that there are opportunity for Black people here. I would never want to close opportunity for my people just because of the vestiges of the past. I don't want to do that. If somebody has a great idea, if somebody has a great product, I don't care who they are, but especially if they're Black, I want them to have success. And part of why this whole situation with the city is frustrating is because I feel like in a city of majority Black people with a majority Black legislature, how is this still not being done? There are people who want this product. There are people who want to start these businesses and they're not letting it happen because of these ideological differences. And at the end of the day, I don't care if you are conservative Black, if you're an atheist Black, if you're Afrocentric, whatever. If you Black, I'm rooting for you. So I just want you to win. And we could talk about the ideology later, but the context that this email is talking about, it doesn't exist right now. And so you can do what you want and share with as many people as you want to share with. But for me, I don't want to close the opportunity for people that look like me to have economic benefits from this.
Emily chimes in. I work with a nonprofit that does economic development. We've been doing a windshield survey of 6 Mile. What is missing in the dispensary discussion is that there are multiple illegal dispensaries already in operation, at least 4 on 6 Mile, or otherwise known as McNichols, if you look at street signs. Many are called social clubs that are members only. I think some may be serving minors. So the discussion of whether or not to have dispensaries is moot. Do you want them to be legal and regulated or not is the only question. The look on your face, Norris, is... look, this is what I understand to be true, that the actual enforcement on this stuff, I know the city's been busting some people, but this is rampant.
1,000%. And this is what I'm saying. It's baffling. If you want this to be a legal thing, you have to regulate it. And by the way, if it's regulated, you can start getting tax revenue from this. So all this crazy ideological BS that I'm hearing from the council is so frustrating to me because for years, the city ain't making money on this.
But it was already happening.
It was already
happening.
And
it will never stop happening.
Exactly. So why do we not get to a point where we just make money on it as well? It's silly, especially in an area where we're talking about we need more money for the schools. We need more money for infrastructure. We need more money for this. I'm not saying weed is a panacea for all of that, but damn, at least take a few $1 million you get from weed taxes and, rebuild a school or two.
There were a lot of people who mentioned the idea that they think that there's already too much weed shops, weed things. There's a lot of NIMBYism or not in my backyardism around this. Would you want to see a separate measure that talks about like these sorts of businesses? Because to me, I do hear, and I heard in the inbox, the tension that Councilmember Tate described. It's a thing, and I think it's a thing in a number of suburban communities as well. There's a number of people who are just like, you know what, Hazel Park can have all of it. I'll just drive to Hazel Park. I'm fine. What do you think about that?
I think that's really dismissive for the folks who potentially use it for medicinal purposes. I think it's dismissive for people who want to potentially start businesses. I actually think it's okay even if we zone it in a few areas of the city. If we say like because Detroit is so big, you couldn't just do it in one place. I think if you say sort of like the West Side has a red light district, so to speak.
Or a green light district.
Or a green light
Well, I know
district.
they use green light for something else in this
Yeah. But let's just call it that for all intents and purposes. So the West Side and the East Side and the Central Core have green light districts where here's where you go for your weed. That can make sense to me. However, I just still think that we don't have necessarily the population density that would call for that.
Probably the population density for one.
Right, for maybe one. And I think that that is fair. But I just feel like the NIMBYism of it is still, as I said last week, you're not seeing people lobby to get liquor stores out of their neighborhoods, right? You're not seeing that energy. And so for me, I don't understand why marijuana is ideologically, why that's so different for people to deal with. With the NIMBYism, I get it, but I don't. You put it on these major mile roads, as this email showed. They're already the shops there, but if you legalize it, then you could create a task force that could shut down some of these illegal shops, and you get to the point where tax revenue is coming into the city from this product. That's what we need to be getting to. It's not about do I want it or not want it. The people voted. It's out of my hands now.
Well, and the people are voting with their dollars and already doing it. So that's the hard part. I see a lot of sides to this one, but there is part of me from a governing perspective of there are certain things you're just not going to get humans to stop doing.
Yeah.
There's just certain
Drugs
things.
is one of them.
Yep. And that's a very, I almost hate to use the word because it has different connotations now, but it's almost like a very libertarian way to go of like, hey, this is going to happen one way or another, regardless of your ideology. And I think there's a number of things in society that are that way.
Yes. People will be born. People will die. People will have children. People will do drugs. People need to eat. People need healthcare. There's like 10 things human beings will always do no matter what. And so you might as well get taxes from all of it.
April has points about the Rosa Parks Transit Center. Hi, guys, Jer and Norris. Another thing on the issue of transit, the Rosa Parks Transit Center. Architecturally, I love it, but what is going on? If a person is walking, some doors are not open. Doors are not along every wall. Get inside. What's inside? Why go inside? It is an albatross of a white elephant. Where can one go to buy aspirin, a bandage, an ink pen? Why can't we get a small cleaners and shoe repair? There is nowhere to buy a sandwich or soda. Then there's a problem, of course, of people wanting to take their purchases on the bus. There is a meeting area upstairs for maybe 300 people. Why not show cartoons, do something with kids? Why not have kiosks for college applications and job applications? Make productive use of the time. Other ideas, and I'm trying to consolidate this a little bit, use the space for hair shows and nail shows or have services on site. All that space, it is very inviting, used like a corral, and nothing to draw people inside. Please help to make this a topic of discussion. So, Norris, let's discuss it. And thank you for the note, April.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I actually used to live around the corner from the transit center at the old Trolley Plaza, now known as Detroit City Club Apartments.
The apartment building, to me, that looks like it was designed by Khrushchev himself.
Absolutely.
Straight out of a Soviet communist bloc.
And the apartments are similar. But, I really agree with this. I think it's a place that actually is underutilized and it has a lot of potential. And, I hadn't ridden the bus since high school in Detroit. And so I never really used the transit center, but there's plenty of people who do.
I mean, I've used it before.
So you tell me because I don't know either. I'm going to be honest. I don't know either. What's in there?
Not much.
Exactly.
Like most of the time, it's pretty closed up. So this is the thing that's a difficult conversation that we're wrestling with. You remember that whole thing with the Starbucks, with the issues and everything? A lot of people look at that and go, the bus stops the problem. That it attracts quote unquote undesirables or people. And so I feel like that's also kind of the mode that is with our transit centers. We don't think of them that way. We think of them as opportunities for crime and how to combat crime and not opportunities on how to enhance. Like at the end of the day, most Metro Detroiters and honestly, most Detroiters look at transit riders as other than human.
Yeah.
It's just a fact.
No, it is.
It's that kind of mentality. Now, I'm sure there have been issues at the transit center. I know that there's challenges there, but there definitely could be more services. I can't help but think about when Avalon Bakery opened up in Midtown and everyone said, you need to have bars on your windows. You need to shut down everything. Glass block, da-da-da-da-da. And they didn't, and it was welcoming, and it thrived.
It did.
And I can't help but think there are ways to do that with transit. Now, I understand the idea of, you do need to deal with safety. The movies for kids thing. I don't know all the logistics. I'm not an expert in any of that, but I do think there could be more services. We shot this one around our internal Slack. Devin made the point that there are a number of these things near the transit center, but there is a difference. And I'm going to push back on that, saying when you're waiting for a bus or need to catch something, you need to be right there.
You're not going
like, and he
off-site.
doesn't, if you're a bus rider, if you rode transit, like, and I've rode the subway in New York, I've rode the L in Chicago, I've done bus rapid transit. You need to go to the place that's right there because whatever can show up at whatever time, and you need to be ready. So something like that could be really good. And I really wish we had more assets and we thought about our city assets in a way that was more forward looking than I currently think we do.
And to that point, in transit sort of hubs and transit areas in other parts of the city, there are almost like little underground towns that, you know, when you ride the subway in certain countries, that, there's a store, there's a pharmacy, there's this, there's that. So you can go and you can do all these things without necessarily having to interrupt your transit.
When I last stayed in Brooklyn, there was a bodega right at the transit stop, a very popular transit stop over by Marcus Garvey. And you just went in and they had specials for a bus, like 3 pieces of chicken and all that other stuff where it's like, oh, here's a little bottle of water and here's some chicken, whatever, grab a bite while you're waiting for it. And there was a trash can right out there. There was an economy and a symbiosis there. And the thing is with the transit center is that the government controls that building. So the government has to program it.
And so I think there are some elements to that we could include at the transit center downtown. I agree. I think it's a great space. It does look really cool. I think we could do more. And I think the biggest thing that I would like to see down there is some potentially career services.
And she mentioned that. I thought that was a good idea.
I think career services would be great because, again, ultimately, the bus ridership is for folks who probably are not working the greatest jobs. And unfortunately, I think career services will get them to not ride the bus. So maybe that's not why they're doing it. But I think it could be a huge boon.
Would love to hear your thoughts, dailydetroit@gmail.com. And with that, I am Jer Stays.
And I'm Norris Howard.
As always, feedback 313-789-3211, dailydetroit@gmail.com. We are up for the Podcast Awards Best News and Politics category. Podcastawards.com. Your nomination is very helpful, especially as we are up against some national shows. So thank you very much. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit.